Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Quantum Mystic Podcast. And I'm here with Jane, my friend Jane Bear, and we're going to talk about the spiritual practice. What is it? Why do we do it? Why should we do it? Why don't we do it? Um, all the things that are, and why it's so important and why it's such a big, important part of mysticism, mystery school, spiritual growth, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Such a important topic. And hi Lisa. Hi everybody.
Hey Jane. So, why don't we start with a little bit of definition? Because sometimes when I say spiritual practice to people, they're like, "What's that? Like, what does that even mean? What does it mean?"
Yeah. And similar, I feel like I use that term a lot. And to me, spiritual practice is all the things you do to reconnect you to yourself and spirit. And that can be, there really is such a range. But anything from meditation to yoga, and we'll talk more about that, but it's like, it really is when you just bring it into like a little sound bite, it's the practices that reconnect us to the present moment and to ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's a great definition. And I think to me, it has sort of an element of discipline to it, like
Absolutely.
we need to engage with it in a kind of a disciplined way. And I feel like our spirit, like you can kind of get a certain amount of spiritual evolution without doing a spiritual practice. You can kind of get through like the beginner stages, maybe sort of like halfway through intermediate stages. But if you want to progress into like higher levels of spiritual evolution, I think you kind of hit a wall unless you're doing a spiritual practice. Yeah. It's like if we wanted to get in shape, but we're going to read about it, but we're never going to the gym.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like reading it. Exactly. That's a really funny thought. Yeah. Sitting at home, reading a book about bodybuilding and expecting that you'll be able to be a bodybuilder. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's that. And I think there's like such a broad range of things, like you said, like for me, it's always been sitting meditation. Yeah. Because my hippie parents took me to transcendental meditation when I was 10, and I've learned a whole bunch of different meditation techniques over the years that I really like that. But it could also be, like you said, yoga. It could be Tai Chi. Some people do walking meditation. Some people do guided meditation. Some people do like a combination of like journaling and maybe like clearing your chakras and pulling some oracle cards. And I think like, when we're starting out with spiritual practice, I feel like it doesn't matter really what we do. And it's good to kind of spread it around a little bit, like try different things. Mm-hmm. And sometimes for me, like I'll feel in the morning, like I often do mine in the morning, like what do I really need today? And if I'm feeling very like emotionally murky, I might spend some time journaling and then meditating. Sometimes I can't meditate until I journal a bit. Or I might do some energy clearing practices before, like I can't, like, oh, my energy feels all frantic and weird, and I'm going to do some energy management, and then maybe I'll journal, and then maybe I'll meditate. Or my body just feels all kinked up, and I really, I mean, you're the yoga teacher, and I'm just a super, novice yoga practitioner. But like what I understand about yoga is that it was designed to help the yogis unkink their bodies and unkink their energy fields so they could sit in meditation for quite a long time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I feel like we can sort of eat from the spiritual practice buffet a little bit. And then as we get into more advanced levels, maybe we need to sort of buckle down into one practice that we do for a while. That's what I think. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I think, starting out and seeing what works for us as an individual. And, we've said before, like we're not sitting on the mountaintop meditating all day, even though there's that part of me that craves that so badly. The quiet in the cave, meditating all day sounds so dreamy. But that's not the reality. And so, you know, finding what works in this life, in this like lifestyle where we have, you know, jobs and families and
kids
animals and bills. And so what does spiritual practice look like in a busy life and in a busy world? And I noticed that, you know, sometimes it does need to be condensed into little, you know, spiritual practice like snacks, you know, like little just 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there. And I really do feel like over time, that's like putting pennies into the savings account, you know, and it does add up no matter what. And it is the discipline of doing even that 5 minutes is a discipline. And so, you know, meditation has definitely been my backbone throughout my life. Similar but different to you, I was taught like a guided meditation when I was 9 because I had trouble sleeping. You know, it was really hard for me to fall asleep. And so I would do these guided meditations and they would work. And so then being an athlete, I started, I had great coaches who taught us visualization because that's, you know, a lot. There's elite athletes do visualizations. And that's a form of meditation. And then, you know, I got deeper into yoga and seated meditation and did the whole, you know, silent retreats and really learned in different forms of meditation. And I really feel like it is, I mean, there's a lot of different meditations out there. And I don't think that there's one for everybody. You know, I think there's some meditations that really disassociate people if they have a lot of trauma that's stored in their bodies. And so silent meditation is not great for everybody. And so, you know, finding what works is really, really key. And then sticking with it for a while. And again, whatever it is, you know, whether it's a martial art or journaling or even, you know, communing with nature is communing with spirit. Having conversations.
The walk the dog meditation, you know, walk the dog if you're not listening to a podcast or music.
That's right.
Quiet walking. Now they call it quiet walking. It's got a whole thing. I'm like, everything used to be quiet walking and now it's a thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's such an easy time in a way because there's so many different possibilities. You can go on YouTube and you can find meditations. You can do the binaural beat meditations. You can do hemisync meditations, which I think are fabulous. And they're from the Monroe Institute. And what they do is you have to, you know, you put the headphones in, like, you know, like these headphones, and they play like one frequency in one ear and an opposing frequency in your other ear. And then what your brain does is your brain like blends them together to harmonize the frequencies, and it puts you into an alpha state.
Oh, cool.
And I know it's super cool. So I feel like there's all this sort of technology that we have now that can really help us. So, the Monroe Institute has about 1 billion different meditation. You can just download them and pop them on your phone. They have an app. So, you know, now there's so many apps you can get on your phone for meditation that they just either guided meditations or they put a little timer, they play a little background. Like I like one that plays like the music of running water and like birds tweeting and and it's a countdown timer. And I find and it sort of tracks your progress. In the app that I use encourages you to go another minute, go another minute, go another minute. And it starts you at the 5 minutes and then increments you up to 6 minutes, 7 minutes. Before you know it, you're 25 or 30 minutes over time. And I think that's such a nice it's sort of like the beach entry instead of like jumping into the deep end of the pool.
Yeah.
I also feel like there's power if you're really stuck and you want to power up. There's power in like a challenge, like Deepak Chopra and Oprah Winfrey, every year they run this like 30-day meditation challenge. Mm-hmm. You sign up and or your local yoga studio probably runs a 30-day yoga challenge. You get on the mat every day for 30 days. And those communities that come together, that structure, I think that creates like, and if you do anything for 30 days, you're going to level up. You're going to reach another level for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. That's so good. Yeah. There's a lot of support now in finding that spiritual practice and sticking with it. So it's definitely, I think that it was harder to find. It was harder to find not that long ago. No, it's true. There's an app for that.
There's an app. There's 8 million apps for it. They're in there. It's hard. It's like it's hard to find one because there's so many to choose from, really.
That's right. Like which one to choose.
Which one to choose, yeah. And I feel like too, like some people I feel like need a body-based one, like yoga or Tai Chi, because sometimes like a slow yoga, like really like slow, like the way you teach yoga, Jane, is so good, it's my favorite kind of very thoughtful, inward looking.
Yeah.
Yin kind of hatha yoga is so beautiful. Or the flow states that we get into in like Tai Chi, where if you have a busy mind, because I think people, they're like, well, I can't quiet my mind. And nobody can quiet their mind. That's just this idea that we can, that's a myth we got to let go of.
Yeah, but I think this is the point.
That's not the point. And nobody can quiet their mind. And so, but sometimes if you got a super busy mind, those body-based ones, or if you're really ungrounded, body-based ones can be useful. And I also think mantra-based ones, for people whose mind, if your mind is really like squirrel, like every minute, then the mantra can kind of like the structures of the meditation practices kind of give your brain something to do. And saying the mantra or doing the breathing technique or doing the sequence of movements, sort of like giving your brain like a Rubik's Cube and making it go sit in the corner, and your brain's like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. And then we can enter into, we have to sort of trick the brain a little bit to be quiet. And sometimes we can do that by giving it something to do.
Yeah. And to reiterate, I always say that when I do teach people meditation, is that the point isn't to silence the mind, which somehow that became the story. It's actually to teach our minds how to focus on one thing, because we're just do thinking about this 15,000 different things all at once, and just to think about one thing, to really focus on that one thing, and then bring it back and focus on that one thing. And then so it's the Jedi mind training, because that's how we're going to be able to use our minds in what I believe is how they're designed to really be optimally used, And I think it's worth noting that some of the advanced, like not advanced in like a hierarchy, but like once you have a spiritual practice that is really disciplined and steady, you start to, I think, bringing in the energy management and the energy hygiene is a spiritual practice, where you're, the practice of recalling your own energies. And that's like, we walk around with our energies often really wide and in other people's fields. And so learning to recall them so that they're closer in, cutting cords, and grounding, And I think that those become a spiritual practice as well.
Absolutely. It's part of my spiritual practice every day, or usually twice a day. I usually meditate once in the morning, and I aim for 22 minutes. I have to keep a notepad when I meditate because I find that I get super distracted by my to-do list. And sometimes I have to like dump that all, or I have to dump thoughts or things. And if I write it down, I can let it go. So I do that, and I do, like a practice that I learned. It's more almost like Kriya Yoga from Yogananda. Practice. It's the microcosmic orbit breathing, where you like breathe sort of from the earth up to your root chakra, and you hold a root lock there. You breathe up your spine to your third eye, and you hold it there for a minute, and then you exhale down the front of your body. And I do that, and I use a mantra, Soham or Satnam. Both mean I am that. I am that I am. That is like I am that. And it's like on the inhale, it's Sat Nam or Soham. And after like 20 minutes, my mind is usually pretty clear. But I definitely squirm, and I squirm every single time. I've been squirming every day for, many, 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 many years. And the squirm, I think, is what keeps people away from meditating, and it's just this like uncomfortable resistance, the feeling for me of like, I don't want to do that. It's like a little inner child meltdown. I don't want to meditate today. And I squirm on that a little bit. And then I squirm like with uncomfortable feelings or thoughts as they come up, or just like, it's really like hard to do all that introspection and to do all that inner looking. And for me, as I meditate, and sometimes I have to stop and do my energy clearing. I must always start with energy clearing before I can even do that. It's just really like, for me, like coming back to feeling compassion for myself, and meditation cultivates that compassionate observer of the self. That's our consciousness. It's sort of the part of us that's not not the ego self. So the ego's like, I hate this and it's squirmy and I don't want to do it. And the compassionate observer of the self's like, yeah, I know. It's so squirmy. It's fine. Like, you just stick to it. You're going to feel better when it's over. Like, oh, look at you, all squirmy there, you cute little human, Yeah. And that, in the sort of classic sitting meditation, that's the like Buddhist meditation and things like that, is sort of the point of it, is to create that conscious observer of the self. Because that's where we start being able to tell the difference between our ego and this other part of us that's coming in now to look at that.
Exactly. Yeah. To really be able to be the observer of your thoughts. And I think it's a really good point that I can't tell you how many people have said, oh, I can't meditate. It's like, well, you can. It's being okay with the fact that and they say, well, what do you mean by that? I'm like, well, my mind is going boom, 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 thinking. I'm like, exactly. I mean, that's exactly what it's supposed to do. And that's why we meditate, is to learn to just watch those thoughts. It's and that's true for any practice. Is if you're doing yoga and you're doing a form of yoga that is allowing you to be in your body and to focus on your breath, because nowadays not every yoga is focused on that. Some is very, very athletic and is focused on the physical
Gym
body.
Gym
yoga. Nothing wrong with it. It's a good gateway. But if you're focusing on your breath, which really is, there's no yoga without the breath, then you're going to notice that your mind jumps from a thought to your breath, from another thought to your breath, from oh, I'm not even really breathing, to, back to your breath, to a focused breath. And it's the same thing with a seated meditation or a silent meditation or a mantra meditation. It's like our brains are going to be monkey minds. They're going to jump all over the place. And
all over the place.
And that's just the truth of it. And so, with time, it becomes our brains learn how to become more focused and over little by little by little. And then ultimately, if there were to be a goal, we are in meditation all the time. And so we're noticing, as a teacher long ago told me, when you wake up and you actually feel the sheets on your skin, and you feel every piece of your body moving, as you roll out of bed, and you notice the air quality in the room. Like you're so present in the moment that the meditation is all the time, and there's like I'm sure I'm going to botch how it's said, but it's like when you're washing the rice, actually wash the rice, And I notice myself, I'm in the kitchen and I'm washing my rice and I'm thinking about something else. I'm like, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to with, like, the thing. It's like the teaching, the beginner teaching is be present with what you're doing, and so that's where we're headed.
Yeah, that's where we're headed. And I feel like I notice for myself, like I get through the squirm quicker. I come back to my thoughts like, I'm less judgmental. I think that's honestly what, like, in the beginning, you're like, oh my God, I'm thinking again. I'm failing at meditating. And then after a while, you're like thinking, thinking, the technique I learned, you say that and you let the thoughts go and you come back to the breath and the mantra. And then you do that over and over. And then eventually I feel like I get to that point where my mind kind of goes flat, where I'm not thinking.
Yep.
And you have almost that suspension of breath, like where the space between your breath gets bigger and bigger, like you're almost not breathing. And and then there's like a feeling of like unity and sort of like unity consciousness, like I'm more in my higher self, or more in the, like, I'm not feeling the total neurotic, like hot mess of my ego self, I'm just like more in that peace, like equanimity, peacefulness kind of thing. And then of course you come out of it and you go back into it. But I think it's, for me, creating more and more pockets of that, more and more, it stretches out. And I think there's, like, of course, this doctors tell you there's massive benefits for meditation. Meditation and they say the combination of meditation and exercise is more efficacious for curing depression than any antidepressant medication.
100%.
And I think, like the gains are cumulative. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So it seems like we don't, kind of like going back to the working out analogy, like you don't think you're getting there, but like a couple months down the road, you're like, oh, I'm looking kind of buff here. Like it's cumulative and kind of sneaks up on you. And that's, I think, a beautiful thing.
Well, and I think the noticing is in our lack of reaction. And so, there's the ability in real time and in real life, if something was to really frustrate us or bring us anger or bring us like a loud reaction, we're able to pause and see the reaction coming and actually choose differently. And that's really what meditation or any spiritual practice does, is like you were saying, we're the conscious observer of ourselves and our own thoughts. And so the practice is to be able to do that in our living, walking, breathing life all the time. When we're having conversations with our kids, when we're having conversations with our partners, when we're at work or on, I think a lot of people get road rage. I always kind of laugh at people who get road rage. I'm like, why? What's the point? But I understand, like, that's a place where the reaction comes out. It's like that sideways anger. It's not the other person. It's not the driver. It has nothing to do with that. It's something that's underlying within ourselves that it comes out sideways in that moment. But the spiritual practice brings awareness to it, and also makes the reactions less. It allows us to react less,
For
and that's the equanimity that you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, because I teach psychic development, and sort of like I spend a lot of time teaching people psychic stuff. And a lot of my students have this expectation they're going to meditate, and that what should happen is that they're going to get sort of constant downloads from their guides, or they're going to have like these intense psychic experiences. And I really don't when I meditate.
Yeah.
And that often surprises people, and for me, like, I think there are two types of meditations in my world. There's the kind where you're inviting your spirit guides in and you're trying to get a psychic message, which sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. Yeah. And then there's the sitting meditation we're talking about, which is not about that. It's more about, connecting to yourself and connecting to God, higher self, divine source. And at this point in my life, like I'm not, when I meditate, it's not to get a psychic message really ever. Yeah. And I'm open to it. Like, if it happened, I trust that if they need to tell me something, they're gonna, and that's gonna be when it is. And that's also part of the reason why I keep a little notebook, like pad of paper, because sometimes I'll get it. And there are times when I meditate for a half an hour and it's one constant psychic download that's really intense. But most of the time that's not what's happening at all. I'm just waiting to feel my brain go flat.
Totally. It's such a good point, because I've had this conversation with a lot of people also who also have the misconception that meditation is, I'm going to see colors. Oh, my meditation was so excellent. I was like flying up in the universe, and there was all these colors, and I started getting all this information from, Ascended Master so-and-so. And I'm like, okay, pause. Nothing wrong with that, but that's not meditation. Like, that's something different. You're quieting yourself. You're allowing yourself to be open to that information. Now let that be its own thing. First, do one or the other. It doesn't matter which one's first, but they're two separate things. And allow time for just silent meditation where you're not looking for anything. You're certainly not getting colors. You're not hearing things. You're not getting downloads. You're not looking for downloads, at least. If they come, great. But this is the time for yourself. This is your personal spiritual practice. The other stuff is something else, and let it be something else. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. I think it's important to kind of make that distinction. And we're just about out of time here. And I wanted to end a little bit by asking you, like, who your favorite resources are for your meditation. I love Pema Chodron. She's one of my favorite. I've like read everything she's written. I like Jack Canfield is really great. And Michael Singer, I think, are my favorites. What about you? Do you have anything that you recommend for people?
Well, my original teacher, his name is S.N. Goenka, and he is no longer with us on this earthly plane. But at the time that I learned from him, he was, and he teaches a form called Vipassana. And it was apparently, as he would say, is the direct lineage of what Buddha taught when he was alive. And it it's really a somatic based meditation. So for me, that was pivotal. It was huge. And I think it's a really great resource. So that's my favorite. I always go back to that.
And to me, I love transcendental meditation. It's such a great place to start. It's so accessible. There's an app for that. It's a mantra-based meditation. And I love Kriya Yoga, the meditations from Yogananda. But there's all kinds of, depending on, so meditation is not a religion. You can do meditation practice regardless outside your religion, or if you are a religious person, you can go inside your religion and find maybe your meditation practice is to pray the rosary, or to do something that you feel really comfortable with that harmonizes with whatever your faith traditions already are, because all the religions have really powerful spiritual practices as part of their thing.
Absolutely. Every religion does. And they're all coming back to the same place,
Yes.
Really. I will add, there's one app that I have used, and it's called Brainwave. And it has the sounds you were talking about. And I don't use it all the time, but it's pretty cool because it'll bring you to an alpha state, or it just has the waves and it does this really cool wah 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 sound. And so apparently it's good for your brain. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if that's sort of like the HemiSync. And the HemiSync visit, if you want to look that up, visit the Monroe Institute or check it out on YouTube, because they have the HemiSync is so good. It just uses technology and sort of they really understand how our brains work. They're brain hackers, and they understand how your brain works and sort of get you there faster with the technology and the techniques that they use. And they're straight up good-hearted, genius type people. So
love it.
Anyway, that's it for spiritual practice.
That's a good one.
Much for,
good topic.
Yeah, it's a good one. I'm so glad that you were here, Jane, and we were talking about this. And hello, Kitty, Jane's Kitty.
I know.
And you can find out more about us on check out the Quantum Mystic Mystery School webpage. And if you want to, because that's what we do, we're focusing on spiritual practice in our mystery school. If you want to find out more about that, check it out. And we will see you again on our next episode.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jane.